Southeast Asia or Southeastern Asia is a subregion of Asia, consisting of the countries that are geographically south of China, east of India, west of New Guinea and north of Australia. The region lies near the intersection of geological plates, with heavy seismic and volcanic activity. Southeast Asia consists of two geographic regions. Maritime Southeast Asia, comprising Indonesia, East Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, East Timor, Brunei, and Christmas Island. Mainland Southeast Asia, also known as Indochina, comprising Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, and West Malaysia. Divisions. Political definitions of Southeast Asia vary, but most definitions include the area represented by the countries listed below. All of the states except for East Timor are members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. The area, together with part of South Asia, was widely known as the East Indies or simply the Indies until the 20th century. Christmas Island and the Cocos Islands are considered part of Southeast Asia, though they are governed by Australia. Sovereignty issues exist over some territories in the South China Sea. In some occasions, Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan are considered as part of the Southeast Asia. Papua New Guinea has stated that it might join ASEAN, and is currently an observer. Sovereign states * administrative center in Putrajaya. Dependent territories administrative subdivisions. Geographical Southeast Asia is geographically divided into two subregions, namely Mainland Southeast Asia and Maritime Southeast Asia. Mainland Southeast Asia includes Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, Peninsular Malaysia. Maritime Southeast Asia includes Indonesia, Philippines, East Malaysia, Brunei, Singapore, East Timor. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands of India are geographically considered part of Southeast Asia. Eastern Bangladesh and the Seven Sister States of India are culturally part of Southeast Asia and sometimes considered both South Asian and Southeast Asian. The Seven Sister States of India are also geographically part of Southeast Asia. The rest of the island of New Guinea, which is not part of Indonesia, namely Papua New Guinea, is sometimes included Sao Palau, Guam, and the Northern Mariana Islands, which were all part of the Spanish East Indies. The eastern half of Indonesia and East Timor are considered to be biogeographically part of Oceania. History. Prehistory. Homo sapiens reached the region by around 45,000 years ago, having moved eastwards from the Indian subcontinent. Homo floresiensis also lived in the area up until 12,000 years ago, when they became extinct. Austronesian people, who form the majority of the modern population in Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, East Timor, and the Philippines, may have migrated to Southeast Asia from Taiwan. They arrived in Indonesia around 2000 BC, and as they spread through the archipelago, they often settled along coastal areas and confined indigenous peoples such as Negritos of the Philippines or Papuans of New Guinea to inland regions. Studies presented by Hugo through genetic studies of the various peoples of Asia empirically points out that instead of the other way around, another migration from the south first entered Southeast Asia and then traveled slowly northwards. Surheim and others have shown evidence for a Newsentau maritime trading network ranging from Vietnam to the rest of the archipelago as early as 5000 BC to 01 AD. The peoples of Southeast Asia, especially those of Austronesian descent, have been seafarers for thousands of years, some reaching the island of Madagascar. Their vessels, such as the Vinta, were ocean-worthy. Magellan's voyage records how much more maneuverable their vessels were, as compared to the European ships. Passage through the Indian Ocean aided the colonization of Madagascar by the Austronesian people, as well as commerce between West Asia and Southeast Asia. Gold from Sumatra is thought to have reached as far west as Rome, while a slave from the Sulu Sea was believed to have been used in Magellan's voyage as a translator. Originally most people were animist. This was later replaced by Hinduism. Theravada Buddhism soon followed in 525. In the 15th century, Islamic influences began to enter. This forced the last Hindu court in Indonesia to retreat to Bali. In mainland Southeast Asia, Burma, Cambodia and Thailand retained the Theravada form of Buddhism, brought to them from Sri Lanka. This type of Buddhism was fused with the Hindu-influenced Khmer culture. Indianized kingdoms. Very little is known about Southeast Asian religious beliefs and practices before the advent of Indian merchants and religious influences from the 2nd century BCE onwards. Prior to the 13th century CE, Hinduism and Buddhism were the main religions in Southeast Asia. The Jalwadwipar Hindu kingdom in Java and Sumatra existed around 200 BCE. The history of the Malay-speaking world began with the advent of Indian influence, which dates back to at least the 3rd century BCE. Indian traders came to the archipelago both for its abundant forest and maritime products and to trade with merchants from China, who also discovered the Malay world at an early date. Both Hinduism and Buddhism were well established in the Malay Peninsula by the beginning of the 1st century CE, and from there spread across the archipelago. Cambodia was first influenced by Hinduism during the beginning of the Funan Kingdom. Hinduism was one of the Khmer Empire's official religions. Cambodia is the home to one of the only 2 temples dedicated to Brahma in the world. Angkor Wat is also a famous Hindu temple of Cambodia. The Kampa civilization was located in what is today central Vietnam, and was a highly Indianized Hindu kingdom. The Vietnamese launched a massive conquest against the Cham people during the 1471 Vietnamese invasion of Kampa, ransacking and burning Kampa, slaughtering thousands of Cham people, and forcibly assimilating them into Vietnamese culture. The Majapahit Empire was an Indianized kingdom based in eastern Java from 1293 to around 1500. Its greatest ruler was Hayam Wuruk, whose reign from 1350 to 1389 marked the empire's peak when it dominated other kingdoms in the southern Malay Peninsula, Borneo, Sumatra, and Bali. Various sources such as the Nagaraktigama also mention that its influence spanned over parts of Sulawesi, Maluku, and some areas of western New Guinea and the Philippines, making it the largest empire to ever exist in Southeast Asian history. The Collays excelled in maritime activity in both military and the mercantile fields. Their raids of Kedah and the Srivijaya, and their continued commercial contacts with the Chinese Empire, enabled them to influence the local cultures. Many of the surviving examples of the Hindu cultural influence found today throughout Southeast Asia are the result of the Chola expeditions. Spread of Islam in the 11th century, a turbulent period occurred in the history of maritime Southeast Asia. The Indian Chola navy crossed the ocean and attacked the Srivijaya kingdom of Sangrama Vijayatunga Valmond in Kadaram. The capital of the powerful maritime kingdom was sacked and the king was taken captive, along with Kadaram. Panay in present-day Sumatra and Malaya in the Malayan Peninsula were attacked too. Soon after that, the king of Kedah Phraong Mahawangsa became the first ruler to abandon the traditional Hindu faith, and converted to Islam with the Sultanate of Kedah established in year 1136. Samudera Pasai converted to Islam in the year 1267. The king of Malacca Paramaswara married the princess of Pasai, and the son became the first sultan of Malacca. Soon, Malacca became the center of Islamic study and maritime trade, and other rulers followed suit. Indonesian religious leader and Islamic scholar Hamka wrote in 1961, The development of Islam in Indonesia and Malaya is intimately related to a Chinese Muslim, Admiral Zheng He. There are several theories to the Islamization process in Southeast Asia. Another theory is trade. The expansion of trade among West Asia, India and Southeast Asia helped the spread of the religion as Muslim traders from southern Yemen brought Islam to the region with their large volume of trade. Many settled in Indonesia, Singapore, and Malaysia. This is evident in the Arab Indonesian, Arab Singaporean, and Arab Malay populations who were at one time very prominent in each of their countries. The second theory is the role of missionaries or Sufis. The Sufi missionaries played a significant role in spreading the faith by introducing Islamic ideas to the region. Finally, the ruling classes embraced Islam and that further aided the permeation of the religion throughout the region. The ruler of the region's most important port, Malacca Sultanate, embraced Islam in the 15th century, heralding a period of accelerated conversion of Islam throughout the region as Islam provided a positive force among the ruling and trading classes. Trade and colonization. Malaysian legend has it that a Chinese Ming emperor sent a princess, Hang Li Po, to Malacca, with a retinue of 500, to marry Sultan Mansur Shah after the emperor was impressed by the wisdom of the sultan. Han Li Po's well is now a tourist attraction there, as is Bukit China, where her retinue settled. The strategic value of the Strait of Malacca, which was controlled by Sultanate of Malacca in the 15th and early 16th century, did not go unnoticed by Portuguese writer Duarte Barbosa, who in 1500 wrote, "He who is Lord of Malacca has his hand on the throat of Venice." From 111 BC to 938 AD, northern Vietnam was under Chinese rule. Vietnam was successfully governed by a series of Chinese dynasties, including the Han, Eastern Wu, Cao Wei, Jin, Lu Song, Southern Qi, Liang, Suai Tang, and Southern Han. Europe Western influence started to enter in the 16th century, with the arrival of the Portuguese in Maluku and the Philippines, the latter being settled by the Spanish years later. Throughout the 17th and 18th centuries the Dutch established the Dutch East Indies, the French Indochina, and the British Strait settlements. By the 19th century, all Southeast Asian countries were colonized except for Thailand. European explorers were reaching Southeast Asia from the west and from the east. Regular trade between the ships sailing east from the Indian Ocean and south from mainland Asia provided goods in return for natural products, such as honey and hornbill beaks from the islands of the archipelago. Europeans brought Christianity, allowing Christian missionaries to become widespread. Thailand also allowed Western scientists to enter its country to develop its own education system as well as start sending royal members and Thai scholars to get higher education from Europe and Russia. Japan. During World War II, Imperial Japan invaded most of the former Western colonies. The Showa occupation regime committed violent actions against civilians such as the Manila Massacre and the implementation of a system of forced labor, such as the one involving 4 to 10 million Romusha in Indonesia. A later UN report stated that 4 million people died in Indonesia as a result of famine and forced labor during the Japanese occupation. The Allied powers who defeated Japan in the Southeast Asian theater of World War II then contended with nationalists to whom the occupation authorities had granted independence. Present most countries in the region enjoy national autonomy. Democratic forms of government and the recognition of human rights are taking root. ASEAN provides a framework for the integration of commerce and regional responses to international concerns. Conflicting claims over the Spratly Islands are made by Brunei, China, Malaysia, Philippines, Taiwan, and Vietnam. Geography. Indonesia is the largest country in Southeast Asia and it also the largest archipelago in the world by size. Geologically, the Indonesian archipelago is one of the most volcanically active regions in the world. Geological uplifts in the region have also produced some impressive mountains, culminating in Puncak Jaya in Papua, Indonesia at 5,030 meters. On the island of New Guinea, it is the only place where ice glaciers can be found in Southeast Asia. The second tallest peak is Mount Kinabalu in Sabah, Malaysia, on the island of Borneo with a height of 4,095 meters. The highest mountain in Southeast Asia is Karkabo Razi at 5,967 meters and can be found in northern Burma, sharing the same range of its parent peak, Mount Everest. The South China Sea is the major body of water within Southeast Asia. The Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, Singapore, and Vietnam have integral rivers that flow into the South China Sea. Mayan volcano, despite being dangerously active, holds the record of the world's most perfect cone, which is built from past and continuous eruption. Boundaries: Southeast Asia is bounded to the southeast by the Australian continent, a boundary which runs through Indonesia. But a cultural touchpoint lies between Papua New Guinea and the Indonesian region of the Papua and West Papua, which shares the island of New Guinea with Papua New Guinea. Climate: the climate in Southeast Asia is mainly tropical, hot and humid all year round with plentiful rainfall. Northern Vietnam and the Myanmar Himalayas are the only regions in Southeast Asia that feature a subtropical climate, which has a cold winter with snow. The majority of Southeast Asia has a wet and dry season caused by seasonal shift in winds or monsoon. The tropical rain belt causes additional rainfall during the monsoon season. The rainforest is the second largest on Earth. An exception to this type of climate and vegetation is the mountain areas in the northern region, where high altitudes lead to milder temperatures and drier landscape. Other parts fall out of this climate because they are desert-like environment. The vast majority of Southeast Asia falls within the warm, humid tropics, and its climate generally can be characterized as monsoonal. The animals of Southeast Asia are diverse. On the islands of Borneo and Sumatra, the orangutan, the Asian elephant, the Malayan tapir, the Sumatran rhinoceros and the Bornean clouded leopard can also be found. 6 subspecies of the binturong or bearcat exist in the region, though the one endemic to the island of Palawan is now classed as vulnerable. Tigers are 3 different subspecies are found on the island of Sumatra, in peninsular Malaysia, and in Indochina, all of which are endangered species. The Komodo dragon is the largest living species of lizard and inhabits the islands of Komodo, Rinca, Flores, and Gili Motang in Indonesia. The Philippine eagle is the national bird of the Philippines. It is considered by scientists as the largest eagle in the world, and is endemic to the Philippines forests. The wild Asian water buffalo, and on various islands related dwarf species of bubbelis such as anoa were once widespread in Southeast Asia. Nowadays the domestic Asian water buffalo is common across the region, but its remaining relatives are rare and endangered. The mouse deer, a small tusked deer as large as a toy dog or cat, mostly can be found on Sumatra, Borneo and in Palawan Islands. The gaur, a gigantic wild ox larger than even wild water buffalo, is found mainly in Indochina. There is very little scientific information available regarding Southeast Asian amphibians. Birds such as the peafowl and drongo live in this subregion as far east as Indonesia. The babirusa, a 4-tusked pig, can be found in Indonesia as well. The hornbill was prized for its beak and used in trade with China. The horn of the rhinoceros, not part of its skull, was prized in China as well. The Indonesian archipelago is split by the Wallace Line. This line runs along what is now known to be a tectonic plate boundary, and separates Asian species from Australasian species. The islands between Java, Borneo and Papua form a mixed zone, where both types occur, known as Wallacea. As the pace of development accelerates and populations continue to expand in Southeast Asia, concern has increased regarding the impact of human activity on the region's environment. A significant portion of Southeast Asia, however, has not changed greatly and remains an unaltered home to wildlife. The nations of the region, with only few exceptions, have become aware of the need to maintain forest cover not only to prevent soil erosion but to preserve the diversity of flora and fauna. Indonesia, for example, has created an extensive system of national parks and preserves for this purpose. Even so, such species as the Javan rhinoceros face extinction, with only a handful of the animals remaining in western Java. The shallow waters of the Southeast Asian coral reefs have the highest levels of biodiversity for the world's marine ecosystems, where coral, fish and mollusks abound. According to Conservation International, marine surveys suggest that the marine life diversity in the Raja Ampat is the highest recorded on Earth. Diversity is considerably greater than any other area sampled in the Coral Triangle composed of Indonesia, Philippines, and Papua New Guinea. The Coral Triangle is the heart of the world's coral reef biodiversity, making Raja Ampat quite possibly the richest coral reef ecosystems in the world. The whale shark, the world's largest species of fish and 6 species of sea turtles, can also be found in the South China Sea and the Pacific Ocean territories of the Philippines. The trees and other plants of the region are tropical. In some countries where the mountains are tall enough, temperate climate vegetation can be found. These rainforest areas are currently being logged over, especially in Borneo. While Southeast Asia is rich in flora and fauna, Southeast Asia is facing severe deforestation which causes habitat loss for various endangered species such as orangutan and the Sumatran tiger. Predictions have been made that more than 40% of the animal and plant species in Southeast Asia could be wiped out in the 21st century. At the same time, haze has been a regular occurrence. The 2 worst regional hazes were in 1997 and 2006, in which multiple countries were covered with thick haze, mostly caused by slash-and-burn activities in Sumatra and Borneo. In reaction, several countries in Southeast Asia signed the ASEAN Agreement on Transboundary Haze Pollution to combat haze pollution. The 2013 Southeast Asian haze saw API levels reach a hazardous level in some countries. MUAR experienced the highest API level of 746 on the 23rd of June 2013 at around 7 a.m.